Please welcome Managing Director of Amey Highways, James Haluch.
Something else. I think the margins, Jim, in automotive is a wee bit more than we get with yourselves in Highways England, but very good. So I'm James Haluch. I'm the Managing Director of Amey Highways. I also cover waste collections, which, as Martin talked about, the agricultural industry has been one of the most dangerous. So is waste collections, an average of 1 fatality every month within the waste business. Now, what I'm going to talk about next 10-15 minutes, I'm going to do a little summary of what was discussed through the panel discussions. Then talk a little bit about the journey we've had in Amey with driving for better business. And then really emphasise what we've got out of it, what was the effort, and what actually have been the returns. And then just really conclude with a bit of call to action. It's been mentioned a number of times today that we're amongst friends, we're amongst the converted, so to speak. But nevertheless, there's still, I think all of us can up our game, and maybe there's a moment to reflect upon that, and it is have a call to action. So Jim spoke very passionately about where Highways England are going on the management of road-related risk, and how they're really trying to push the bar up, go above the minimum compliance, get to a position where actually they're seeing the management of road risk as one of the key sort of drivers, imperatives below their safety imperative. The panel discussions, especially I thought the one with, in many ways, the regulators, really brought home why businesses have to take these issues very seriously and move beyond the minimum, both from a potential prosecution point of view, but moreover, the moral and the delivering a better environment to our people. I think that came through very strong from the first panel, and I think the second one, the sharing of stories, the way in which individual organisations had realised real benefits. I think Sarah talking about your sort of corporate social responsibility. It wasn't about technology, it was about people. It was making a difference to the environment. And of course, as we look at our workforce now, I mentioned to someone earlier that the average age, I have 5,000 employees, the average age is 54. To bring new people into our sector, bring that diversity, bring the Generation Z, they want to hear about what we're doing for corporate social responsibility. They want to hear how we're doing things differently. It isn't about minimum compliance, because people aren't that interested at a younger age about that. They want something extra. So it's the benefits that individual organisations have seen, the contribution to the wider community, but not forgetting what our minimal legal and contractual requirements are. We then, just after Jim, we had Darren talk about the UN Global Safety Week. I did a LinkedIn post, Sunday I think it was, so I did research on it. I think there was one stat that really jumped off the page at me. Road-related deaths is the single biggest cause of death for 5 to 29-year-olds globally, full stop. Single biggest cause is road-related deaths for young people. But we can't complacent in this country, we can't be complacent at all. While we heard within the rail sector, we've had 0 fatalities for some time, obviously rail related, which is tremendous, absolutely tremendous. We have 5 a day on the roads. 5 a day are killed and 60 seriously injured. Now clearly the network, Jim's network, the Strategic Roads Authority, we're in an absolutely tremendous place there. In many ways it's closed. In that open network of local authorities, it's a very different place. And yet I'm putting my people out to work every day, both at one level and actually driving to work, but another level, we're putting them in a place where they have interfaces with the general public who are driving. Over my time managing highway contracts around the country, I've had 7 fatalities of my road operatives, 6 of which were errant vehicles, half of which were drivers who were fatigued or had fallen asleep. Came across trucker drivers. Every night, I actually put out, and I see chevrons up here as well, put out what's called impact protection vehicles to sit in lane free of a motorway to protect the workforce in front of it. I'm putting a stationary vehicle into the live lane of a carriageway, of a motorway, what have you. Over the last 18 months, I had 5 of those vehicles struck. And every one of those occasions, the road operative was injured. In total, it was over 200 days those 5 people were off work. Their physical injuries healed far quicker than their mental injuries. I did a survey, I commissioned a survey back in February this year. And out of that, 78% of the people surveyed, it was a proper independent survey, quite a large survey, 78% acknowledged they drive too fast and they don't pay enough attention going through roadworks. And I think the 2 things that really struck me there was, one, was people actually acknowledged being a road worker is one of the most dangerous jobs available. And 2, nobody wants their kids to be doing that type of role. I don't want my kids to do that type of role. And yet the public acknowledge their behaviours and yet still do it badly. We followed up that survey with doing radio interviews. I did 11 radio interviews. Gosh, it was a hell of a day. Did live breakfast shows right through to talk radio. We got one of the operatives, one of the drivers of the IPV, to talk about the mental impact of being struck by a vehicle and how difficult he found it to come back to work. So, driving for better business, for a business like ours, and I'll come on to some of the stats in a minute, is very much around absolutely making it as safe as possible for my people going about their daily job. It's also that nudge, which was talked about in the first panel interview, about how we can raise the standard of driving full stop, because that has a direct impact on my employees as well. And if I was going to have a little wee safety moment just for a second, I went up to Tamworth Station yesterday, park up the car, get the train down to London, and I came out with my ticket for the car park, and I realised every single car, 30 cars, had reverse parked. What a change in culture. That little nudge of all of us improving our driving standards, doing things a little bit better, has made an impact. So I do think, yes, we're preaching to the converted, but us, by raising our standards, and we'll talk some of the specifics on driving for better business, raising it, we pull up the ones behind as well. And we probably see that in our daily life. So coming to Amey, we've got a fleet of 2,000 cars, 3,000 light goods vehicles, white vans in various types, 1,400 HGVs, and in my part of the business, I actually have 1,200 HGVs within the Amey business. And another stat, which I particularly find quite amazing, we spend £1.6 million a year, or a month, £1.6 million a month on fuel. So that's the how much stuff we get through. Before we did Driving for Better Business and really tried to bring the whole approach together, which we do, we had 2,000 incidents of damage to our vehicles. And of those instances in 2017, 77% of them were our related responsibility, where our people, were drivers, whatever, had some fault in those injuries, 77%, which had a £5 million insurance and direct costs. I think when the speakers spoke earlier about the indirect costs are significantly higher as well. So, Driving for Better Business, we, as a business, recognised we had challenges. We also had a really good set of processes and procedures for fleet, for compliance. You know, obviously we're a large O licence holder, so we're doing things by the book, but that clearly wasn't good enough. The framework, Jim talked about the framework, the steps. What it really did was actually join together a number of initiatives, but also highlighted where we had some gaps, and particularly around, let's call it people processes. I'm a bit old-fashioned. I still believe in presenteeism, like why do I have lovely big flash offices that nobody's ever in? But it made me have to think back and say, why is it we're asking people to drive from A to B to C, to sit into offices, Is there not a different approach we can take? So we created within the business Skype September, which for the whole of the month of September was to try and change that, my thinking as well as others. We can work differently, to the extent now that every Tuesday we're expected to try and find different ways to complete meetings and not actually have to physically be in an office to complete that meeting. And really it's about marbling in all your processes, all your procedures, and the way you work, the way you manage your fleet, the way you manage your people, your training. Would we have done it without Driving for Better Business? I don't think we would have. We'd just carried on ticking individual boxes in silos, not trying to join it together holistically in the way we operate. You also have to do some case studies. The one I'm going to focus on is CheckSafe. And again, a number of people may use CheckSafe, faithfully an app on the phone, and every time you go and use any of the vehicles, HGV downwards, you effectively have to go around and do your vehicle check. It tracks you doing your vehicle check. It tracks you going around the vehicle. AI in the system highlights those who are not spending long enough doing the check, highlights those who have not actually physically walked around the vehicle. Simple things like that. Yes, it's about compliance, but yes, it's just raising the bar, but also making sure people had the time to do the check safe properly. Again, as was said earlier, making sure we're respecting people need to do the job properly, so they have to do the time to do it. So, tangible benefits, absolute tangible benefits. So we're looking, this is absolute data, live data, as my colleagues got for me in the last few days. So in the last 12 months, our at-fault incidents have reduced by 49%. So 49%, which had a £5 million bill before. Our CO2 is dropped by 6%. Again, you think, well, it's not a huge amount, but this is like for like on the same vehicles, not where we've got new vehicles, we've put a lot of hydrogen vehicles in and electric. That's great. This is like for like improvements. Our fleet utilisation, because we're actually looking what's happening to the fleet, how it's moving around, 30% saving. Come back to having 1,200 HGVs, getting them working 30% harder. Absolutely significant improvement to the bottom line. And then on fuel efficiency, so our £1.6 million a month bill, that's dropped by 4%, which is basically £1 million. On a like-for-like vehicle, £1 million reduction in our fuel bill, like-for-like. Some things we could have done better. I think what became clear is, and I think again it was mentioned earlier, that the level of data from the Canvas system, from the various sort of management information is huge. It's actually trying to make sense of it. What ones actually make the difference? Which ones turn the dial? What's your top 5 metrics, whether it be braking, driver behaviour, so on and so on. And that's taken us time, I think, as a business to actually work out what are the metrics we should look at consistently across the whole business. So that was one thing we worked at. Another one is, and it's said before, businesses like ours have a lot of supply chain. So how do you take that down to the tier 2s, the tier 3s? What we've done there is we have fleet conferences, and we're now engaging with those lower tiers within the business. And that's getting some traction. The next step is where we bring in drivers from, for example, Hayes. We actually have just individual drivers coming in. How do we ensure that, clearly we've ensured at their compliance level, we've got this appropriate driving licenses and the like, but moreover, the next steps up in training. So we're working with Hayes, so any suppliers we get in coming to the business are at a higher standard before we even get to come to work for us. And I think just to finish on, the next steps for us as well is around, we're doing a lot of work on fatigue, wearable technology. Actually, the Amey business is far larger in the rail sector than it is in highways. And looking at the last Rail Safety Standards Board report, really emphasising the point, fatigue is where we see some of our biggest challenges. And what we've done there, we've done a lot of stuff around the contracts, VR goggles, making people aware of what fatigue actually feels and looks like. But that's an area which we've got to up the game on. And then finally, just before the call to action, is around collaboration. I think where I've found Driving for Better Business, where I've seen the dial change, is a level of open and honest collaboration between different suppliers. Within safety, I think the sector moved on a huge way 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, where safety was no longer a differentiator. It was all about working together. What I'm seeing now is the way we're tackling the management of vehicles also is not a differentiator. I'm leading a group for Highways England looking at how we automate the whole lane closure process with IPVs. I'm working with our closest competitors, Tier 2 contractors, to find that solution for the benefit of all our people and those 5 operatives who were struck, my operatives, who were struck by cars doing their job, and how we absolutely eliminate that in the future. So driving for better business, the champion status, you never finish, you're always looking to do better. But as an organisation and a leader in that organisation, I have seen absolutely real, tangible bottom line benefits. I've seen real, tangible well-being benefits as well. But most of all, it comes back to knowing you're doing your absolute most to make sure your employees and the people they interact with go home safe and well. Which brings us on to the call to arms. Should organisations do this? Well, hopefully, between all the presentations today, if you aren't convinced, you are now. But the cost, well, it's absolutely free. It's government-backed, the resources are free, the processes are free, there's lots of organisations who give their time freely to talk about it. Yes, clearly there's going to be a cost in aligning HR processes, your fleet, your plan, the way you actually interact with your supply chain. Yeah, these are real costs, of course they are. But hopefully you've seen from the benefits I've talked about, you get that back handsomely. I think the other element ultimately now is how do we bring it down to Tier 2, Tier 3s? Highways England, Jim's very keen and made it clear, as a Tier 1 supplier, this is where you should be. But the reality is, most of us know, 60, 70% of what we do in delivering, whether it be the maintenance and the construction and the management of the roads, is actually done by Tier 2, Tier 3 suppliers. So that's a big ask. That's a real call to arms. Not only what you can do, but what can you do to bring your supply chain up to similar ways of thinking and actually try and drive those benefits absolutely through, so that when we look at our KSI data, it really starts to mirror what we've done with our AFR data, our employee data. We both get them matched. So thank you very much for your time. There is one question, I think, coming up on your iPad, which is simply something you want to adopt. I don't think we're going to get an answer. It's just honestly, I think, to help the organisers see if they've got the right temperature, if they've got the conversation at the right level. But that's part of, they just want to get a bit of feedback. So thank you very much for your time. As out of today, please go home safe and well and reflect upon, all of us, how we can do things a wee bit better when it comes to the welfare of our employees. Thank you.